A couple of weeks ago, you heard our episode with Ritesh Agarwal, the founder and Group CEO of OYO Rooms. If you remember, he talked to me about the atmosphere inside the organization right after COVID hit. To put it simply, it was wartime inside OYO.
So we had to do innovate our business because our customers and our hotel owners' choices and interests dramatically changed. Uh, Capital availability was in short supply if you're a travel or a hotel industry company. So we had to protect as much of our cash as possible. We had to make tough decisions to say goodbyes to some of our team members, a lot of whom I would have, or our senior leaders would have personally interviewed, recruited. We had fought shoulder to shoulder in the journey over the few years. So it was a tough time. It was a tough time. In those 2 or 3 years, I think our company truly changed. The way we perceive perseverance, changed completely, right?
That was the first hour of my conversation with Ritesh, who explained in detail what it took to come back from that near death experience. I'd recommend you check out that episode and you'll find the link to it in the show notes. Anyway, we took a short break after the first hour. We stepped out, had a coffee, chatted a bit, which helped immensely because once we stepped back inside the studio, the conversation turned inwards. We got to reflecting, retrospecting. How has Ritesh grown? What has he learned as a founder, as a CEO, as a leader? And something he said really surprised me. It was when I asked him if he considered himself a wartime CEO or a peacetime one.
It's a tough one. I try to move myself between both times. I would say I'm typically a peacetime CEO.
I didn't see that coming. To be honest with you, I kind of assumed that because OYO had been in war mode through all its years of difficulties, Ritesh was a wartime CEO for sure. When you listen to this episode, you'll know that Ritesh knows what kind of CEO he is because he's an extremely deliberate and reflective person. He's thought about every challenge and every opportunity that's come his way and what he's learned from it. Reflection is non negotiable for a CEO, he says. And in this episode, part 2 of our conversation with Ritesh, he explains this. Why you must take the time to reflect. When should you do it? And of course, the process at OYO to collectively reflect as an organization. I think this is the perfect episode for us to wind down the year here at First Principles. Ritesh looks back on his decade as a young founder and CEO, how he's changed, how his own mission has evolved. We talk about recognizing which opportunities to grab and which ones to pass up, and how to deal with regret when it inevitably comes. Let's begin. Ritesh, you said something very interesting during the break when the mics were off, something about reflection and experience. Could you repeat that for us?
Yeah, look, I think something that I truly believe in is that a lot of time people say that I have experiences over so many years, so many businesses, and so on. But my view is that if you don't really reflect on it and apply it well, those experiences are worth nothing. So the simple way to put it is experiences are cheap in themselves, but reflection of those experiences are very valuable. So my view is that if you have experiences, then you have great raw material, but you will have to convert it into full form by reflecting on it and thinking out how you would apply it.
When and how did you become a reflective person? Given the young age at which you started, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you were not reflective. Few people are reflective at 18, 19, 20, etc. Right? You're 30 now. But at some point, there must have been a gradual or perhaps a sudden transition where you found, value, perhaps even comfort in being reflective. Sometimes, if I may say so for myself, I don't want to say this for you. We hesitate to reflect because either we don't have the time to reflect or we are afraid of what that reflection kind of like, I mean, what does it say about me? We are uncomfortable with reflection. But you've made that transition. How did you make that transition where you came to see reflection as more, or experience as a raw material for reflection, as you put it?
Yeah, look, I think first off, as entrepreneurs, we all try to be a better version of ourselves, right? So inherently, this started from the very early days of, becoming an entrepreneur. But I will tell you when the switch,
The conscious, a
yeah,
shift to
when
conscious
there's a flip,
reflection.
right? I think that flip was in, again, I think this management committees at OYO are a big part of it. So almost 7 years back, in one of our 7 or 8 years back, in one of our management committees, there was this discussion of saying that, hey, there is this water cooler conversation, right? That generally people were hearing. So I said, today we are going to have an elephant in the room conversation. This is going to be called reflection session. These conversations are going to be mandatorily cathartic, which means that you're not allowed to say good things. You're required to reflect over the last few months. And we have to talk about 3 or 4 things that are not going well, or 3 or 4 things that you don't like about what's happening. It's mandatorily cathartic. And it's a big risk, right? Because the entire energy of the room can be sucked out in a conversation like this. I listened to everyone, and it was sort of semi expected, or it was understood that it has to be bad things about me more than just the company in some way. And I would encourage the first couple of colleagues who had started back in the day to start, because if they go hard, ability for others become much easier. They set the playing field in some way. And at the end, I would acknowledge every individual's feedback, saying, this is what X person said, here is my view on it, and I really appreciate this feedback, thank you. And I would recount the strengths of the company at the end. So what would have started as an energy sucking exercise actually became the most energetic part of the session, first time. After it did become so, we've tried to keep the tradition. We don't do it in every management committee, but once every few months we try to do a reflection session, as we call it. And that sort of, while started as one forum, now there are many mini forums of it that we've created. So I think that's when it became a conscious choice that reflection can actually be not just a valuable exercise personally, it can be valuable for us as a group. And now almost like if I have some experiences I've had in the last 2 weeks and I've not sat down and reflected on it, I feel like I'm missing out, like I have something missing as a part of me. I know in the millennial or Gen Z ecosystem, they call it journaling nowadays, and that's probably a way of reflection also. I'm trying to.
What is your method?
My method is writing. Again, I know that's semi-journaling, but I consider it more to-do list, or list of things that I feel are going well or not going well. And
How do you do this? Pen and paper, smartphone?
so the smartphone, I'm on Teams, and Teams allows this option that you can write a message to yourself. So that is filled with like hundreds of lines of notes. My job in some ways to sort of get massive amount of knowledge and views as sponge, and then try and reflect it back to myself or whoever I feel it would help. So I think reflection is a very important thing, and it's a tough one to do. You mentioned this, and I fully agree with this, that it can be very scary, because you may feel like you will learn something about yourself that will make you feel very weak, that will make you feel very or that will show a part of you which is not the stronger part of you. But in my view, that's exactly what a reflection is here to do, which is to identify those weaknesses and make you or your job, yourself as a professional more stronger. So I think that's quite valuable.
How do you, as a founder and CEO, assess the risks from not doing certain things? Because it's easy to assess the risk when you're doing something, right? Like, if this goes wrong, if we spend too much, if we hire too many. But sometimes it's like the opportunities that exist and you are saying, no, we will not do this, right? So what's your mental model when you're evaluating things to not do?
Look, I think I break it into two parts typically. On one side are the bits that we do not do as a principle. I think that makes life very easy because you can justify to yourself and people around you that principles are designed to not be broken. So it's a very easy decision to take in some way. The second one are judgments, and in judgments you can be wrong. It is or the situation can evolve, and hence the judgment needs to be reconsidered versus what it was earlier. So I think as and where the principles are not the reason of not doing something, outside of it, I typically like to one, ask enough questions. Again, going back to the perspective of curiosity, and not just to the people, uh, almost finding people who will have an opposite opinion. That sort of, to begin with, gives you a perspective of are you missing something entirely different? If you listen to all the counter opinions and at the end of it you feel like, well, I knew all of it, or with reflection, with all these additional perspectives, my judgment still says we shouldn't pursue this, or our leadership judgment thinks we shouldn't pursue it, I have zero regret of not pursuing it. But on the other hand, if there are perspectives I hear which I would have not thought about myself, and I learn saying, hey, why did I not think of it in this manner? It suddenly becomes relevant. In those places, I would, of course, or our leadership would, of course, consider changing it and saying that we should try it differently again. I don't subscribe to the opinion that one should try everything and see what sticks, because resources are scarce, right? No company, no individual has infinite time or resources. So you have to make the most out of it. So prioritization is the heart of decision making that we all do as leaders. So in my view, uh, listening to every opinion about why what you're thinking about does not make sense and why it makes sense also, being intellectually honest and saying that, well, these are three things that I had not thought about, and hence does it make sense to try it, versus, well, knowing this also, I think we shouldn't pursue it. For example, launching a new geography. We've taken a view at OYO that we will not launch a new geography because we have a lot to do in the geographies that we are already in. So every time somebody comes with an idea of a new geography, I listen to why it makes sense. I ask the same question saying that does it not mean that we will get distracted? Does it not mean that it'll mean more effort? Then people say, well, the engineering effort is very little. So I would say, but isn't the effort of adding a currency lead to 6 microservices getting impacted, payments, reservations, owner fulfillment, and so on? And at the end of it, if I feel like I have been able to convince the person on the opposite side it's better, or it means that the previous decision made sense. But someday will come, maybe because of situation, or maybe because something that I had not learned, somebody else will convince me, and hence will pursue a different goal. So that's, I think, the core anchor to this is, does OYO become a more successful company when these are company decisions, and do I become a better individual if it's a personal decision? That's sort of the outcome that I would chase with this framework.
Got it. While you were saying, the last few sentences, you use a very powerful word, regret, somewhere in the middle, right? If I were to just kind of ask you, what are your views generally on regret? What are they?
Look, I think, first of the feeling with the word regret is a very bad one to begin with. It's not a great feeling to have regret. I think you can reflect, you can have learnings, but if it is regret, it's a strong word, which means that it evokes also because of a strong sentiment.
That's right.
That you genuinely, strongly believe that either that should have happened or that should not have happened when you look back. So that's sort of the first thing. I genuinely believe in this perspective of, and again, I think I read it in probably one of the recent newsletters, which was the risk regret framework. I truly believe in it, and this I actually read for the first time a few years back, but I have always had this inherently in myself, which is, I ask myself that if I were to take this plunge, reverse, in the inverse of it. If I were not to take this plunge, would I regret it? if I would regret it, then I would consider taking this plunge, because it's a very strong statement, right? Which means that it truly makes complete sense to pursue it, but you're letting some barrier stop you from pursuing it. On the other hand, if it's just a good opportunity to have, but you're still not fully convinced, you'd say that, well, if I did not pursue this opportunity, I may feel bad,
But you
but I
won't
wouldn't
regret.
regret it. So,
In general, are you a kind of person who regrets missed opportunities?
very little. Very little, unless I believe that um, I did not do my job well. So,
So you're
some,
also a glass half full kind of person. I mean, I guess most entrepreneurs
yeah,
and
it's
founders
relative.
are. You
It's
have to
relative.
also, right?
But I take my job very seriously. I take that I as a professional have to do the be the bring the best version to myself at work. I try to do that. So I of course have no regrets. But the toughest feeling I have is when I don't get an opportunity to solve something, and we fail. I'm that kind of person where I will be the first person to say that if there is a big challenge, I will jump in and fight shoulder to shoulder. And after that we fail, I feel like at least I put my hard work.
Good. I mean, interesting that you said fight. Earlier on in the conversation, also, you used the word, I think, fight shoulder to shoulder, etc. Are you a wartime CEO or a peacetime CEO?
I think that's a tough one. I try to move myself between both times. I would say I'm typically a peacetime CEO who can
Wow, I did not see that coming. I mean, I would assume that from the time you started OYO, through all the ups and downs, you have constantly been in war mode in some sense or the other, right? In the
yes.
boom years, in the bust years, now again coming up, like, IPO leading up, and yet you see yourself as a peacetime CEO. Why?
I think that's the I would say two parts to it. The first one is, the reason I say that is because you mentioned we've discussed about this perspective of going to a near death experience and coming back from it, right? So I think those are great reflective times to ask yourself what you do well, what you don't do the best, and so on. So I think my ability to be able to sort of pursue constructive upsides of building brands, spending time with customers, merchants, and giving it the time and resource and the effort it needs, I think is the best when I truly feel like I have to do right by the stakeholders and I'm not chasing a certain short term outcome, right? And I think COVID in some way has made me feel like I'm the best when I have that sense of independence of saying that this opportunity is exciting, but I'm not going to take it until I have fixed these three things. Which pre COVID, in some way, I sort of had this thing of saying that we are growing so quickly, there's that new challenge I have to pursue. So these three challenges I have to solve while on air. Like there's this cliche, right? That I have to change the airplane engine while flying. Now I have no pressure like that. I'm very happy to land the plane, look at every single part of it, improve it, and then fly again. And I've seen that I'm at my best at that. Not to say I think I'm a bad wartime CEO. I think I can do it when needed, but I feel like I do a better job in
It looks
when it
like
is more thoughtful, more structured in some form.
So, from what you just said, it looks like one of the unlocks or the transitions that happened for you during COVID is you became much more comfortable with saying no and living with that decision. And I think that's personally speaking as well, and as for many founders as well, and many who appeared on the show as well, the early years of entrepreneurship are about saying yes to everything because the world is full of opportunities, and why would you not want to like take on everything? And then you become, you realize that you, like you earlier said, you don't have infinite resources. You got to figure out what to do. And I think that, like, so for you, what was that transition to be able to say no and to accept and be at peace with that no? Because saying no and then that regret or that feeling of saying that, did I just
I
say
wish.
no?
I wish I could have done it.
Yes, that could have been another 10% market opportunity or valuation or fundraising or team growth or whatever that is. But when you say no and you seem to be at peace with saying no, to the extent that you consider yourself even a peacetime CEO, which by the way I don't agree with. But I mean, how does that transition feel to be able to comfortably say no and bring the plane down?
Look, I think it's goes back to reflection, right? That is, I look back and I saw that when did I make the best decisions? I, s- I, I learned about myself and our leadership that we made the best decisions when we were in situations where we could have spent enough time thinking about those decisions, the challenges that came with, the opportunities that came with, without having that pressure of saying that let's do it because there's a certain growth target we have set. There is a certain metric that we have behind ourselves. And then I also asked myself, it's a little bit personal also to some extent, which is saying that what do you personally want to create in the long term? And I think if you're truly mission oriented to make a positive difference, and going back to the purpose that I mentioned, better, and you'll see there is no number in this, right? It is all better. So it's not I want to have X hotels, Y rooms, X countries. I think it's an evolution. So I think it takes time to be able to be at peace with saying that it's a long-term aspiration, and there is no number that we've put to it. I mean, there is of course a business financial targets that you put to your business, which is required, but individually you're comfortable saying that to the extent I'm doing good work and I'm becoming a better version as a company and as individual every year, I feel good about it. I think it takes time to fully digest it and be okay with it. But once that, again, the switch flips, your ability to make decisions becomes far better, because more often than not, a lot of times you've made wrong decisions. You knew it in your heart of hearts that there was something wrong coming. I'm sure, right? Like even you as an entrepreneur sometimes would grudgingly say yes to something, but in your heart you think that, well, this can go wrong. But you're hoping it is not going, it does not go wrong. My sense is that has changed. Now, until I believe nothing will go wrong, I wouldn't pursue it. At least that's how I think today.
Who or what has brought about this, I think, evolution or transition in you to becoming a calmer, more focused, more deliberate founder CEO? One thing that you've said a couple of times in the past is your management committee and your senior leadership team. Is there anyone else or anything else, a book, a philosophy, a person, a mentor that has made this happen?
Look, my sense is, of course, my leadership team has played a great role in it, because I I genuinely believe that the quality of talent that we have, along with, I think quality of talent, of course, I feel very good about, but most companies feel good about their talent. But I would add one more thing: the quality of ownership they demonstrate in terms of impact is pretty disproportionate. That has allowed me to sort of become a better version and a more calmer version. I think there are two or three other groups. I would say my family has played a big role, and I would consider both my wife, who was my girlfriend earlier, my mom, Papa, who I lost early this year, but he played a big role.
Sorry to hear that. My
I think
condolences.
everybody around me in some way has played a role in this, especially because pre-COVID, again, I spent very little time with family. COVID was, like most professionals, a time where most of the people spend more time with families, partly not out of choice, out of requirement.
Appropriate place to use the word regret.
Sorry.
Appropriate place to use the word regret now, that like when you look back and time with family consistently comes across for most founders as something
Yeah,
they'll never get back.
I still wouldn't use the word regret, but I wish I had, of course, spent more time with family. But I think I have no regret because, you know, 6 7 years back, one of my colleagues lost his mom in couple of months. 7 years back, I think. It was very tough for all of us because we knew her. She was so good to all of us. We as leaders know each other individually, but our family is also very deeply connected. So everybody's husbands, wives, parents, they all know each other. So we used to really like her. And we lost her in a matter of months because, she was diagnosed with cancer last stage. And it was a very reflective time for everyone individually, including myself. So I promised to myself that at least sometime every week, I will find to make sure that I spend time with my family. And I said that I really hope that this will never come to me because, because of my age, I felt that there is enough time. But I felt that regardless, I will spend enough time. So I think that has made me feel slightly better that at least with parents, I've spent more time. I don't think I did that enough with Geet, but with Geet, I have a long life, so I'm okay with it. But I do wish I spent even more time. I think there is no time is enough. Family is a big reason. Third is people around me. I think I truly, in every situation, try to ask myself who is the best person in finance, who is the best person in tech, who is the best person in sales. And I try to go meet these people. And I have tried to do this back from the day when I started the company. The easiest way was cold emails. Earlier, very little people responded. Now, slightly more people do. But I think agenda less, making an initiative to reach out to enough people to learn from them has played a big role also.
Interesting that you should use agenda less again, because now it is probably the third time that you use agenda less, because when we were earlier discussing what do you spend your time on in a week, I think your third bullet was agenda less conversations with colleagues. Now, I love agenda less conversations. The conflict in agenda less conversations is like, what are they meant to achieve?
Yes.
As a founder, you know that in some senses, many agenda less conversations lead to destinations which you couldn't think of earlier.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
But when you're bringing in a colleague into a discussion, like, do you have a structure or a method when you're meeting people to bring some semblance of, because
Yes.
otherwise
Yes.
there is a fine line that divides an
I think that's a great
agenda-less,
question.
purposeful conversation from an agenda-less,
I think that's
purposeless
exactly
conversation.
what I was going to say. An agenda-less conversation doesn't mean that it is not a successful conversation. So it should achieve something for sure. Or I like the word purposeful also. So there are 3 or 4 things that are very crucial, right? I think, or I would say 3 or 4 key segments of the discussion which is very crucial. The first is preparation is a very critical part of, regardless of agenda or no agenda discussion. I spend a lot of time preparing for any time I spend on, and I encourage all my colleagues and other professionals also to do so as well. So let's play it. Let's say I am meeting one of the business leaders of a leading telecom company. So everything that a hotel company can achieve with a telecom company can be achieved by somebody who's a mid-level leader in the hotel company and a mid-level leader in the telecom company, especially at the scale we operate and the scale telecom companies operate. But I would still use that opportunity to go and, of course, initially give a business update about our company and also learn with the counterparty about their judgment, about how they have made business decisions over the last few years, what scale of business they have, how do they operate, and so on. My hope is through that conversation, I would learn about how some business decisions being made in a very different industry can be applied to my industry. Second, this is the first segment. Second segment becomes potential partnership. Naturally, when you're 2 business leaders from different industries, you discuss what partnerships you can pursue. The low-hanging fruits exist. Wi-Fi integrations, being able to have television and entertainment with the brand. Maybe it will become more advanced to say that our hotels are in great locations. Can we have little telecom towers at the top of our hotels? But it quickly becomes much broader, where you learn about, well, does a company have a finance business too? Is there a payment solution that we can do more? Do they have a training ecosystem which can create value for us? And the third, and this is in my view the most important part, which I try to keep most of the time for 30, 40, 50%, life stories, which is saying, let's say if I was talking to the Airtel's CEO, if I was speaking to Gopal, I would ask him this question of saying, do you remember the monsoon dhamaka? when the share prices plunged 80%. Tough time. What was it like being at Airtel that time, and what made you confident that you will come out on the other hand? In the same way, talking about relative peacetime, there was a period where you were the absolute leader by profits, may not be by subscriber count. Did that bring a sense of complacency to say that, well, life's good? Do we challenge ourselves enough? And by the way, I consider him one of top quality professionals. I had him come speak to our team's leadership team during COVID as well. So my sense is these three, in my view, are the most crucial outcomes in a conversation. But the reason it's agendaless is it's not the meeting has not been arranged with a insight of saying that, well, what was your target last month and what will it be next month? It is slightly more broader than that. So you can call it agendaless. The other word for it could be strategic, depending on which word is more impactful.
Thanks, Ritesh. I mean, another version I've heard of this is in the context of, let's say, working from a physical office. Like it's like the Zoom meeting versus an in-person meeting. The Zoom meeting is a transactional meeting where both of us have time on each other's calendars, and we don't like to accept a meeting where there is no clear agenda or purpose. So it becomes, okay, let's get to it. How do we achieve this? And then it's done. Whereas when we are in office, and one of the reasons I think many founders want people back in office is you can have these, I think, agenda-less conversations, which are, I think, impossible in
a
Zoom
video call
or in
setup.
a video
Look, I
call.
believe that in relationships, there are only two things that are happening. You're investing in relationships or you're drawing from relationships. My view is when you're on a video call, which is transactional, you're drawing from the relationship. You can draw only as much as you've invested. It's like telephone charge, right? So you have to charge it and then you can draw the energy. My sense is these conversations in some way are also great energizers for the relationship, because the person who's working, who's in the meeting with you, is a colleague or a business leader, who's a partner. You're truly investing in the relationship by sharing your views, learning their views. So the next time you have to have a short-term agenda outcome discussion, it's much easier to pursue it because they know that you're coming from a good place, how you think, what are your judgments, and so on. But if you just have that conversation without having this, the other person doesn't really know where you're coming from in a lot of ways.
I mean, that's really well put. And we use, like, at least I use a version of this to explain culture as well. When COVID hit us and most organizations, I think, I think culture is also built up by investing in it through personal relationships, through meeting, being next to people in office. And then I think that 1.5 years of being apart and seeing each other over Zoom draws down from that cultural treasure chest of the organization. And I think all of us organizations at some point have to either replenish that chest or pay the cost for that chest, which comes from, like, higher attrition, less bonding between employees, I think a fraying of culture, etc. I say this purely from, the point of view of the Ken
I fully
as
agree
well.
with this. I fully agree with this that a sense of community is very crucial for long-term culture of a company. And I think COVID helped us a lot in some way of being able to have more flexibility, but it did come with this downside.
It has
and
a cost.
Hopefully, there will be a balance that
Yeah.
we'll achieve over time.
You've been through ups and downs. In the worst of your down days, what motivates you? Or in general, what motivates you?
I think a combination of two things that motivates me, right? On one side, the sense of opportunity, the sense of the future, of saying that, I could be part of a company. I grew up in Andhra Odisha border. Now, when you drive around, so the closest city from our place, Vishakhapatnam, Vijayanagaram, that belt, right? Now you can see OYOs there. So when I drive to home, I go to Vizag, typically drive or take a train. Typically take a train from there to ride. I like train journeys. But if I drive sometimes, I can see Oyos on the way, right? So, and just pointing to it and saying that I was a part of being, building this. I think, doing that more and making that difference in more geographies and more forms, I think that and many others. So that opportunity inspires me. But there's another thing also. I feel a sense of responsibility also inspires me. I feel like this was not meant to be. I was meant to be working as a software engineer in a
IT
large
services company.
outsourcing or IT services company. That is what probably fate was. For whatever reason, maybe it's I have been lucky or whatever, I have got an opportunity to be from the same town. And like if you speak to my school friends, nobody would say that this kid would get the opportunity that he has gotten, right? So, for whatever reason, I have gotten this opportunity. Maybe it was because of the India is in a place where tech companies were about to grow or something. Hard work, many people put, right? So I think as a combination, I feel like now that I've gotten this opportunity, if I don't make the most out of it, I would almost be unfair to the thousands of people who have supported me in this journey. So I think a combination of opportunity and responsibility inspires me.
Continuing down the track of reflections, when you started OYO, you were young, you were hyper focused. Your product was, I think, hyper focused. Like you knew with clarity that this is the segment, this is the product, right? As you've grown, as you've raised funding, as you've expanded, your product has become more diversified. The OYO of today is not a single, so you're not just operating,
1,000 rupee
hotels,
affordable hotels.
right? You have holiday homes, you have various other businesses as well, right? And I mean, how has this been for you? Because that clarity and sharpness that came, you use the word mission driven thing, right? You started this with a very clear idea that we will disrupt the world with this product. And that kind of got, maybe diffuse is the wrong word, but diversified and diversified and diversified. And now you're starting to approach a business which is very different from what it is, right? How does this, I think, how do you come to terms with the fact that the organization that you're running today versus the vision that you had for what you wanted it to be?
Look, there are two ways to look at it. One way to look at it, which is a more, which is one way to explain it, is saying that look, the purpose is always to get small hotels to be successful, and we are sort of pursuing it. But in another way, you're absolutely right. That is, it's not the exact same kind of hotels that we started with, the exact same model that we started with. Geographies are very different from what we started with. We have a fairly large business in Europe with 80,000 holiday homes, which is while technologically it's the same business because you're doing dynamic pricing, revenue management, growth. So competency wise, it is similar. But when you meet the homeowners there, even though their backgrounds is middle income for their country, they're very different from the hotel owner I met just now when I was staying at the OYO hotel, right? So I think it's a fair question. How I have adopted to it is I have sort of told myself two or three things. The first one is saying that learning and solving complex problems is what I have seen keeps me going. Like that is the most exciting time of the day when somebody says, this is something 20 people have been trying, not working. Can you help fix it? I'm very excited about it. It's like my most highlight of the day. If I can solve it, I'm happy. If I'm not able to solve it, also I'm happy. But I feel like I'm able to intellectually spend the time and effort to make a difference. So that's one. That's one upside of it. The second thing is impact grows. The one thing that I've always asked myself, that what is the one thing that I believe is my success individually? I feel impact, that the number of people's life that we can positively impact, customers, property owners, and so on. So I think a broader business allows us an opportunity to do that. I think the third and something that I constantly ask myself is saying that, is this too much? And whenever I ask myself that we are constantly asking ourselves, should we deprioritize some things? And that we try to do. Like, for example, during COVID, we deprioritized from a bunch of countries and said we'll only focus on India, Southeast Asia, Europe, and US rather than, China, Middle East. Middle East, we still have some business, but we are not prioritizing growth a lot there.
How tough was that? How tough was it? Because often you're walking back the decisions. Because the thing with founders is that when you made those decisions, you would have full conviction. And when you're undoing those decisions also, you tend to have full conviction. So my question is in two parts. How tough was it for you to undo, decisions that you've made? And second, how do you communicate to your colleagues that, because this comes across as confusing to sometimes
Yes.
colleagues, because it's like, how could you have strongly believed in something when we did it, and how can you strongly believe on something when we are undoing it? What do you even believe in, and how do we realize what you believe in?
Yeah.
So
In our case, partly it was helped by COVID in some way because in a lot of places we didn't have a choice because there were limited resources. But coming back to, I think, humility and over communication is the best way to do it. You have to be able to stand up and say that I think I got it wrong. You get bunch of business decisions right, you get some of them wrong. Here is what my thesis was when we made the choice, and here are two things that did not work, and I guess it was a mistake. And here are the ways we'll learn from it and use it to our advantage in the future. So I think it's tough to say that, especially when you have 1,000+ team members who are looking at you and they think that you can make no mistake. And you have to be able to say that, look, we are all humans. You make mistakes. My job is to back you. In the same way, sometimes I have made mistakes. We learn from it and get better. But I think on the other hand, one learning from these is now as a company, the cost of mistakes can be very high because we're a large company. We have lots of team members, business partners, and so on. And the reason I said we are being more comprehensive about decision making and deliberate about decision making is that we are thoughtful in saying that we don't want to make a mistake because we didn't invest enough effort before making a decision. If you put in the effort, still mistakes can happen, right? Like Tata Motors, probably one of the most rocking stocks today, but they also had a mistake in one of their vehicle lines at some point of time. So mistakes will happen, but make if you do this with every form of thoughtful decision making that you have put in, you have and deliberately, I think it's more manageable after that.
how do you think about optionality? The ability to create multiple, because like I said, this goes back to my earlier question about, when you started, you put all your eggs in that one basket, and today you're diversified because you know that all your eggs should not be in the same basket, etc. But do you have any mental models around how you think about diversification and optionality at OYO?
Look, I think I'll go back to my perspective of saying that while there are things that are different, in my mind, I still see of it as getting market share of hotel and holiday homes and customers on the other side. But you're right in saying that the segments are different, both geographically as well as within India. We have like an economy segment and mid-market segment, which is different from where we started at. I think the mental model, I think of it is in two cuts. The first is the competencies should always be the same, which means that acquiring merchants, being able to make sure that they are upgraded to a certain format, dynamic pricing for being able to get them more yields on their underlying program, and customer service in case there are any challenges in order to resolve it. So, to the extent the technology and product on one side and the processes on the other side are consistent, it allows you to keep becoming a better platform regardless. And on the other hand, it of course allows you to be able to sort of balance out risks to the extent they exist at some point of time. COVID was a great time to learn that. India used to open, Europe used to shut down. Europe used to open, India used to shut down. I think this sort of hedge kept us going. It was not a deliberate choice, to be honest, but it some way helped us to be able to see through COVID. And even now, it sort of hedges our seasonality within a year. India's seasonality is a complete counter opposite of what it is in the western part of the world.
Earlier we were talking about changing your mind. How easy or tough do you find it to change your mind?
I think, let me answer it in a slightly different way. I try to keep myself, and again, I don't think anybody can be 100% intellectually honest, but I try hard to be as intellectually honest as possible. And I think partly my colleagues don't let me not be intellectually honest, and partly I tried it deliberately to ask myself that did I make a mistake? There are a set of questions that you ask yourself, right? That is, did I make a mistake? Are there things that could have been done better? Are there things that we missed that we could have thought of better, and so on? So I think that's sort of what to the extent I logically believe that it did not make sense. It's very easy to change my mind, but to the extent I'm not able to logically get there, it's hard. So I think depends on how objectively I can see it.
A recurring thread in the entire conversation from your side has been, I think, your people, your colleagues, your team, etc. So my question is related to that. Like, what have you changed your mind as an entrepreneur about when it comes to managing people or coaching people or growing people? What did you believe? What are things that you believed in earlier, but now you've changed your mind about?
Look, I think given I've been working with a lot of our colleagues for a very long time, and again, I'm saying this as a company which is not that old. I mean, 10 years is old, but not like we're still a young company. And majority of our colleagues have been around for 7, 8 years. A lot of people are new as well, and they're doing quite well. I think my belief has been that fairness is in short supply. So the amount of focus a leader should spend on fairness, and fairness could be time you invest, support you provide in terms of resources, comp, being able to give newer opportunities, any of these things. I have found that fairness has been one thing that is one of the most demanded facts. And that's unfortunately not consistent fairness, I would say. Consistently fairness for a very long time is not so easily available among colleagues. So as and when fairness exists, the ability to pursue business outcomes, challenges becomes much easier. That's my one big learning, that the amount of time CEOs spend on fairness and whether it is being achieved is lesser. They often think that the HR leader will pursue it, but deliberate fairness effort is a lot of work.
I want to dig deeper into that, because does this not conflict with, let's say, the Pareto principle? If you've got a team of 100 people, and let's be hypothetical about it, right? You cannot be fair to all 100, right? There'll be some who are high performers, some who are extremely high performers, some who are average performers, some who are stable, some perhaps who are not. So what does fairness mean?
That's a great question.
If you're fair to everyone, you're definitely unfair to the high performers.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So I think I want to be clear in saying that fairness does not mean equal. Fairness means that when other people get to know something, they believe it is well thought through. I think that's sort of how I define fairness in my head. I think good news is the Pareto. The good thing about that is everybody understands there is a Pareto. It's not now there. Some people would still disagree with that, but that will be a minority. If you think, fairness truly in my mind means that what one should deserve without asking for it, whether it is challenge, opportunity, support, anything, they should be able to get it without having to demand for it. That's in my mind what fairness is. And it's tough to make that happen because you have to almost spend enough time with your team members and your colleagues to learn what fairness means to each one. be able to share what fairness means to you. And then
Where do
be
you find the time to do this? Because in the hurly burly of business, where there are projects to be launched, products going live, targets to be met, all of that, where is the time? I mean, and I'm asking this genuinely, like,
yes.
to invest in getting to know people, what they truly think and feel, especially at your scale and for a CEO.
I think this is a great segue to what I mentioned earlier about the top three things, and the third being agenda less conversations. A part of it will be the third section, which is open conversations about here's how I think, here's how you think, what inspires you, what do you want to be 10 years later, what does your family feel about what you're doing, are they proud of the work you do. I think a lot of these conversations, in my view, are probably the most relevant investment a business leader can put in for making sure that the projects, the targets, because look, I am very clear in my understanding that I am not the best salesperson, finance person, HR person, right? I have all of those colleagues with me. My job is to make sure that one, they can work better together. And second, make sure that each one of them believes that they are empowered and there is a framework behind which they can pursue goals. To the extent I can have these purposeful, albeit may not have an agenda conversation, and get them to the best version in terms of the impact they can create. I feel like that's the best investment of my time.
Switching to some personal questions, what does personal time look like for you?
I think personal time, I have believed that anyway because
Or what
of,
the young generation calls me time. Let's use the same lingo.
well, that me time is even more concentrated, but I would say personal time. I think a few things. First is I try, I try to make sure that it's quality time rather than quantity because as entrepreneurs, for good or for bad, the time is in short supply outside our work. We are just so much in love with what we do that there's less time outside. So I try to spend quality time. I think I try to spend quality time with Geet. I have adopted an indie, and she is a star at home. So
How old is she and what's her name?
she's 2.5 now. Yeah, I adopted her in the middle of COVID. Her name is Pepper.
Great. I mean, hello from another indie parent.
Oh, you're an indie parent too?
Yeah, Gabru, almost 5 years old.
And ours is she has a dark black coat, so she nowadays looks like a Rottweiler. Being
Is she a Rottweiler mix? Does she have the black? Because the same. Ours is the same as
really?
well.
Oh wow! I'll show you
Yes,
some
we'll
pictures
exchange
then.
pictures.
But so I try to spend time with her. There's of course Lisa, who's the other dog we have. I tried to do fitness. So couple of months back, I sort of got into the fitness regime. So I had not worked out all my life. I used to, of course, do sports and athletics in school, but not like proper fitness effort. But last 2 or 3 months, I've been
You didn't
doing
need to
HIIT.
because you also had the metabolism advantage of youth.
Yes.
Which is slowly
Which is
starting
slowly
to fade
reducing.
away.
I was introduced by a friend to JC at Fitter. Fitter is a startup which is in
Yes.
the world of fitness, and he's been spending a lot of time personally to sort of say that if I can turn around somebody as inefficient as you, then I could do it probably with a lot more. So there's a specific regimen of HIIT which I try to sort of apply. I love documentaries. I'm a big fan of watching documentaries.
What kind of documentaries?
All of them. I'll tell you. I'll give you examples of my favorite ones, so that'll give you context.
Yeah.
So, entrepreneurship is one of the favorite ones. Is The Men Who Built America. It's a documentary on History Channel. If you haven't watched it, it talks about how US was a civil war-driven nation, and entrepreneurs like Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, they transformed the country. At my heart, I'm still somebody who roots for the underdogs like most people. So Selma, which is a documentary on Martin Luther King, is one of my favorites. I used to be, in school. I used to try and be extempore sometimes. So Martin Luther King anyway, used to be a somebody who people his speech at Selma was one of the most special ones. So I think all kinds, but I think I would say historical documentaries which are for a moment of time. It could be war, it could be transformational characters like Martin Luther King or entrepreneurs. I think in any of those sort of is quite inspiring to me. I would say anything which has very exciting history in it is very interesting to me.
So that's personal me time.
That's personal time. There's a lot of things, as you can imagine.
Do you read books as well?
I try to. Yes, yes. I
What
do.
kind of books do you read?
Again, I think.
And if you have any recommendations, favorites as well.
Yeah, I think I already called out one of them, which is No Rules Rules. Of course, I must call out 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. I think it is special because he launched the book the same year I became a fellow. So the first time when I went to see him, he gave me a copy of with a note on it, and it said, "For your journey from 0 to 100,000 rooms," and then crossed it to make it 1 million, signifying his ability to think big always. I think. There is a book that I read long back. I've never given a recommendation of it, but it was fun. I used to live in Ghaziabad in Indrapuram, and work used to be in Gurgaon because
Wow, that was some commute.
so you take the yellow line, it starts from Vaishali and it goes to Huda City Center. That's the entire route, right? So it's a long metro train. So great time to read books. So one of the months I read, I can't remember the exact name. It was one of Sidin's books, Sidin Vadukut. He had a very, it was really funny. So I think it's a broad range, but I think, and now more recently I've been reading health books also. But I like the most is books like 0 to 1 and, No Rules Rules, things that talk about company building, the hard things about hard things. I think books like those are my favorites.
Is there anything that you've really gotten into or geeked out over the last 6 or 12 months? Anything new?
One is fitness. I just talked. I also have my Whoop for a few months. I see that it's catching up now. More people are getting these.
Sorry, what is that? It's
So Whoop is a tracking device, but it's become more popular. So I got it a couple of months back, 3 months back, before the Cricket World Cup started.
okay. This is
But
the
now
one
in the
that
World Cup,
apparently the cricketers and all were wearing, and people were saying it's not even available in
Absolutely.
India, etc.
So I think before that, I was trying to explain people why this is more accurate than
the Apple Watch.
usually the Apple Watches, and then the World Cup
Why
came
is
by.
that? Humor us.
Sorry.
Why is it? Why is it more accurate than?
Actually, it's a tough question. It's a tough question. But, I just feel like more often than not, partly it is also the application of the watch. A lot of time people sort of remove their watch and sleep. Makes it very hard to figure out your resting heart rate, because if you're not resting with the watch, how do you even know? But I actually have to learn more about why it is more accurate. But it is more accurate because if you see your, if you're at a hospital and you track your, I think the ECG is still all right on an Apple Watch. But if you look at your various derived matrix from that through the day, I've seen sometimes those numbers could be different. But anyway, I've tried to solve. So that's one. Fitness is one. I would say the second one is, what's the second one? More reason. Look, I think there's so much happened in this year that I have found very little time to pursue much beyond
Something
it.
much more important
Geet's
is
a
coming.
yoga trainer, so she's been trying to get me to do yoga, and I've been telling her that this doesn't work for me because on one side is the intensity training, on the other side is yoga. But I try.
How are you preparing yourself? Are you preparing yourself to be a parent?
Actually, to be honest, I get this question saying, have you done parental training? I have done none of it. So, we're also trying to sort of see that if we could do most of the work ourselves once the child arrives. So I think it's going to be an exciting one because you'll learn on the job, as I've done mostly in my life so far. But otherwise, I've actually gotten a lot of great recommendations of startups, which help through the journey of parenting. So I guess I will learn about new companies also. But frankly, I'm excited and nervous. Nervous because I don't think I'm fully prepared.
On that note, thank you so much. Best wishes for, I think, the nervous and I think, much
Exciting
more
times.
exciting times ahead. And thank you so much for your time and candor.
Thank you, Rohan. I really enjoyed it. I wish someday I get to ask all the same questions to you.
I hope so someday. Thanks. I hope we at the Ken can kind of get to that level one day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to First Principles, the weekly leadership podcast from the Ken's newsroom. That's right, from December, we're dropping unreleased and new episodes every Thursday. Meanwhile, and in parallel, the First Principles newsletter is also weekly now. I hope you're reading it. We're hitting new records every week for community participation, with subscribers sending in book recommendations, personal habits, favorite songs, and of course, my favorite silent Sunday photos. So, if you're a fan of mental models, books, leadership, decision making, entrepreneurship, self reflection, you can rely on us twice each week, Thursdays with the First Principles podcast and Sundays with the First Principles newsletter. You can find links to sign up or to submit recommendations in the show notes. Finally, if you like our work, please tell us. Rate or review First Principles wherever you get your podcast from. It's honestly the best judge of a podcast quality and the most reliable way for someone new to discover us, the same way you once did. This episode was hosted by me, Rohin Dharmakumar, and produced by Anushka Mukherjee. The audio editing is by Rajiv CN, our resident audio engineer. See you next Thursday. And oh yeah, a Happy New Year!